Yes, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Kev from the gym. Cap on because we need a haircut. And once again, my barber's traveled away, but it's all good. So today we are talking about the big fight on the weekend, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Benn 2. Is the rematch. Is it going to be repeat or revenge? I'll be honest, when this fight was first announced, the rematch, to be honest, I wasn't too excited about it. I thought to myself, if I was Chris Eubank Jr., why give him the rematch? You know, you've won the first fight. There was a lot of drama surrounding the contract and the rehydration clauses and all that sort of stuff. You won. It was closer than you probably expected. Just sort of ride out into the sunset or, go for a world championship fight. Why take the rematch knowing all the risk that can be associated with the rematch if you lose potentially? And you know what? Now that the fight is around, I'm a little bit more excited for it. I'll be honest. I'm a little bit more excited for it. Some of the variables are still there, unfortunately, because again, we know that Chris Eubank's a little bit tight at the weight, doing 160 middleweight. However, the rehydration clause is still in there. He again has to rehydrate no more than 10 pounds the following morning. So the morning of the fight on the Saturday morning, he can't be more than 170 pounds. And for me, I just don't get how that's still allowed to be a condition for this fight. You've won the first fight. You are the A side. You are clearly the bigger name. You're the bigger draw. You've got the more credible CV in terms of who you've boxed and even who you've won against. And you won the first fight, which is basically all of the negotiation for the other side out the window in terms of asking you to rehydrate to a certain limit. To me, I just don't get how that is even possible. You know, we saw Terence Crawford go and box Canelo Alvarez, and he went up 2 divisions up to 168. He didn't ask Canelo to rehydrate. Granted, Canelo's the bigger draw and probably would have rejected that demand anyways. But why can't Chris Eubank do the same? Especially because you won the first fight. In my view, you've probably got more leverage than Conor Benn in this second fight, and maybe even more options. I know Conor Benn can always go back to 147 and fight for a world title probably, but Eubank's a big name and he could have got big fights without this rematch. But obviously, it's a money fight. What can you do? Money fight. How do you tell someone to turn down $10 million? I guess. So, talking about the fight, anyways. How do we see this fight going? What's a bit of a breakdown from my perspective as a coach, as a trainer? And what's my final prediction? First things first, I will say that Chris Eubank to me looks better this time around during fight week than he did in the previous fight in terms of how he's making the weight. He's always quite tight at the weight because there's not a lot of fat on him. So there's a lot of guys who, if you've got a little bit of fat on you, you can lose weight quick, but you can also put it on quite quick. Whereas Eubank's always lean all year round. So, weight cut's always going to be quite tough. But what I felt that he did wrong last time around was he looked like he kind of crashed the weight. So it looked like he was more or less comfortable in his weight throughout camp, not really actually losing weight. And then when it got to fight week and maybe 2 days, 48 hours before the fight, ended up doing a bit of a last minute crash, a last minute weight cut. Whereas this time round, to me, he looks like he's managed the weight a little bit better. And you can see that he's trimmed down a little bit, but he doesn't actually look too drawn. And I'll show you a picture and explain what I mean. So here's a picture of Chris Eubank as he arrives to the open workout. And he's always got the high cheekbones. You can see that he's always got that. And you can see around his eyes, he's a little bit drawn, a little bit gaunt. But it's pretty normal to me. That looks like someone who's cutting weight gradually. He's in fight week now. But that looks okay to me. I'd be more concerned if he looked completely fresh-faced right now, and then on the very last day, he's doing a super crazy cut using all the sauna bags, the sauna suits, and all that sort of stuff. So to me, he does look okay. And this is just a picture, a still image. But when you see him in the open workout, actually doing his warm up and then a bit of pad work, he looks fine. He looks like he's on weight. He looks like he's been doing it gradually. He looks like he's where he should be 2 or 3 days out. So I'm not too concerned this time around about him making the weight. I actually think he'll probably come in slightly under 160. I think he'll probably 159 and a half, is my view. Bomac and his team are always very good when it comes to weight making anyways. Even when Crawford was at lightweight and he was, that weight was super tight for him, he always seemed to be bang on the, at the weight. Sometimes they'd have to do like a hot bath. But I'm not concerned about his weight this time around in terms of actually making the weight. I think he'll be bang on or slightly under, is my prediction. But going back to how the actual fight is going to play out, I did find their open workouts quite interesting. I think Conor Benn needed a slight change of tactics if he's going to have any more success compared to the last fight. He needs to slightly change his tactics. In the last fight, he was winging his punches from too far out. He was loading too much with the right hand. To me, his game plan's got to be quite simple. Conor Benn, he's got to double the jab and quicken his feet to get into range. Everything behind your double jab or your double step with your feet, get into range. And then you either want to step to the right and throw the right hand, or step to the left and throw the left hook, or work the body. But he's got to basically dart in behind the double jab or the two-step, boom, boom, double to get in, and then use your angles at that point. To me, the last fight, he was just winging from too far out. And Chris Eubank, to be fair, he doesn't always get the credit for his slight boxing IQ, but he's got good eyes. To me, he's got quite good eyes. So if you're not setting up your shots and you're winging it from far out, he's got good enough eyes that he's going to see that coming. He's going to roll. He's going to step back. He's going to slip. He's got pretty decent eyes to me. So I do think that Conor Benn's just got to refine his tactics. He's got to keep it simple. Double jab, get your feet into range, and then look for the angles. Step to the right hand, step to the left, work the body or the left hook, and then everything's going to flow from that. And in his open workout, that's exactly what it looked like they were working on with Tony Sims. And Tony Sims is a great trainer. I'm a fan of Tony Sims. And from what I know of him, he's got certain combinations that he calls, similar to us in our gym actually. He's got certain combinations that he names after fighters. So he'll shout whichever name. It might be Gatti, it might be Ward, whatever combination he shouts, the name he shouts, then that will trigger Conor Benn to know, right, this is what I've got to do. But in terms of their open workout, double jab, get your feet in, and then you look for the angles. Pretty simple, but he's just got to refine a lot of the work that he was doing in the first fight. To his credit, he showed he's got a good chin, he showed he's got a good heart, he showed he's got great recovery because he took some big shots and he did recover well in the back end of the fight. So he's got to show all of that again, but just refine some of his work. And I think that Tony Sims has worked on that during this fight camp. Now, for Chris Eubank Jr., what has he got to do? For me, he's got to go back to his boxing. He's got to box more. And it's going to be hard. It's probably easier said than done when you're depleted, if you've had to rehydrate to a certain limit and you haven't got the energy. Because in the last fight, the first couple of rounds, he was boxing. And then when you could see his energy zap, and then he got drawn into a slugfest. But with Bomac in his corner, with Red, with Esau, Terence Crawford's trainers, all three of them, they're great coaches. I think they're going to keep him disciplined, keep him boxing nice and long. He's going to work on his lateral movement. So step into the left, step into the right, keep it very simple. He's going to mix up combinations, head and body, but for the most part, he's going to box at range and just focus on turning left and right, that lateral movement, keeping Conor Benn turning left and right. And I think if he does that, I actually think that he could box smart, box well, box at range, and eventually I can actually see him breaking down Conor Benn. If he keeps it disciplined, I do see quite a clinical performance from Chris Eubank Jr. I can see. He's got underrated boxing skill. He doesn't always show it, to be fair. But if you study Chris Eubank Jr., and I've seen him for a long time, I've seen him in the amateurs, And for me, there's some of the amateur highlights you probably can find on YouTube from when he boxed in the Haringey Box Cup. And in those highlights, you'll see that he's actually got quite good boxing skill. He can box at range. He can use his feet, left and right lateral movement. And he is very underrated in that sense. Granted, he doesn't always use it. But I think against Conor Benn in this fight, if he wants to make it clinical, he's got to keep his fundamentals nice and tight, everything behind a long jab, using his feet, just stepping left and right, lateral movement, keep Conor Benn turning, and eventually you'll break him down. When you get into the later rounds, then you can start working combinations and start going for it a little bit more. And I think that probably will be his game plan. And I do think he'll break down Conor Benn. So my prediction, final prediction, I understand why someone could see Conor Benn winning potentially, because he's going to be the fresher man. The last fight took a lot out of both guys, and Chris Eubank's older now, he's 36, so certainly he's going to, more of the effect of the fight is going to be with him as opposed to Conor Benn, 100%. With that being said, even despite the rehydration clause this time around, I do see Chris Eubank Jr. winning. I think it's going to be a bit more of a clinical performance, a bit more of a cagey performance. Now that the emotion's out of the way, they've got respect there. In my view, this is going to be more of a boxing match. It's going to be more down to IQ and more down to who can make the proper adjustments in fight. And to me, Chris Eubank Jr. is a little bit more superior in that way. I do see a late stoppage between rounds 7 and 9. I see him boxing early, nice and sharp, and then stepping on the gas in the back end of the fight. I see a late stoppage between rounds 7 and 9. Not a brutal KO or anything like that, just more TKO or a referee stoppage, a couple of knockdowns potentially. I wouldn't be surprised if Junior knocked him down a couple of times as the rounds go on. So a knockdown in the sort of first couple of rounds, another knockdown in the mid rounds, and then eventually it stopped between 7 and 9. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, but I see a more clinical performance from Eubank Jr. and a stoppage between rounds 7 to 9. That's my final prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way slightly, but I do favour Eubank Jr. on a late stoppage between rounds 7 and 9. On a side note, from what I'm hearing, industry insides, I'm hearing that both guys are sparring really, really well. Obviously, Conor Benn's down at the Matchroom Gym, and Eubank's training out of Churchill, who are good guys, who I know quite well as well. So I'm hearing that both are sparring really, really well, but at the same time, that's sparring partners are obviously going to say that they're probably under NDAs not to say anything otherwise. So you maybe take that with a pinch of salt. But I'm excited for this fight. I do think it'll be more of a cagey boxing match. And my money is on Chris Eubank Jr. between rounds 7 and 9, if not a unanimous decision. I do think clinical performance between rounds 7 and 9. But yeah, let me know what you think, guys. Put it in the comments. I'm interested to hear what anyone's got to say about this fight. Are you excited for it? Do you think they should fight again? Are you bothered or not? Do you think that the rehydration clause is dangerous? What's your final prediction? Do you think that Eubank will win? Or do you think that Conor Benn can avenge his defeat first time around? But yeah, that's been me, Kev from the gym. Catch you on the next one. Peace.